A 300-pound black bear is standing on its hind legs just 15 feet from a glass patio door, and on the other side of that glass, two little children are watching it with wide, confused eyes, not understanding that they are seconds away from something terrifying, and the only thing between that bear and those kids is a 4-year-old German Shepherd named Duke who has already made his decision, who has already chosen what he's willing to do, and what happens next will be captured on security footage that this family will watch over and over again, footage that will make a father fall to his knees and beg forgiveness from an animal he nearly gave up on. So if you think you know where this story is going, I promise you, you don't, because this is not just about a bear encounter, this is about loyalty that doesn't wait for permission, bravery that doesn't ask for recognition, and the kind of love that a dog carries in his heart that we don't always deserve. So let me take you back to the beginning, back to the morning when everything still felt safe, when this family had no idea that today would change everything they believed about protection, about instinct, and about the quiet hero living under their own roof. The Masons lived in a stunning countryside mansion about 45 minutes outside of Asheville, North Carolina, the kind of home that looks like it belongs in a magazine, with its wraparound porch, stone fountain in the garden, and acres of beautiful forested land stretching out behind the property. And if you've ever been to that part of the country, you know how peaceful it feels, how easy it is to forget that nature isn't always gentle, that the same woods that look so calm during the day are home to creatures that don't care about property lines or fences or the safety of your children. But the Masons weren't thinking about that, not really, because they had built a life that felt secure, protected, and full of love, and at the center of that life were 4 people and one very important dog. David Mason was a successful tech entrepreneur, the kind of guy who worked 60-hour weeks but still made time to coach his son's Little League team, and his wife Sarah was the emotional anchor of the family, always making sure everyone felt seen, always the first to notice when something was off. And then there were the kids, 7-year-old Ethan and 4-year-old Lily, 2 little rays of sunshine who spent most of their free time running around that garden, playing near the fountain, and following their dog everywhere he went. And oh, Duke, let me tell you about Duke, because he wasn't just a pet. He was a presence, a 90-pound German Shepherd with a calm temperament but alert eyes, the kind of dog who would lie quietly at your feet for hours but snap to attention the second something didn't feel right. And if you've ever had a dog like that, you know exactly what I mean. You know how they seem to sense things before you do, how they watch the world with a kind of awareness that we humans have long forgotten, and Duke was that kind of dog, deeply bonded to the children, always placing himself between them and anything unfamiliar. And Sarah used to joke that Duke was a better babysitter than most humans, but she had no idea how true that joke would become. It was a Saturday afternoon in late September, one of those perfect early fall days where the air is cool but the sun is warm, and Sarah had decided to set up a little snack station outside so the kids could enjoy the weather while she kept an eye on them from the patio. And David was inside on a work call, something about a deal closing on Monday that required his full attention, and you know how it is, life gets busy, responsibilities pile up, and sometimes you're not fully present even when you're standing right there. And that's exactly what was happening. David was pacing the living room with his phone pressed to his ear. Sarah was arranging fruit and crackers on a little outdoor table. The kids were laughing and chasing each other around the fountain. And Duke was lying in the grass nearby, relaxed but watchful, his ears flicking toward every sound, and no one noticed the first warning sign, the way the birds suddenly went quiet, the way the squirrels that usually darted across the lawn were nowhere to be seen. And Duke noticed, he definitely noticed, because his head lifted slowly, his nose twitched, and his body went completely still. And if Sarah had been watching him closely, she would have seen the subtle tension in his muscles, the way his eyes locked onto the far corner of the garden where the trees met the stone wall. But she wasn't watching him, she was focused on Lily, who had just dropped her juice box, and Ethan was begging for more grapes, and life was loud and distracting the way it always is when you're raising small children. So no one saw Duke stand up slowly, no one heard the low growl rumbling deep in his throat, and no one understood why he started walking toward the back wall with his hackles rising like a warning flag. The first thing Sarah noticed was the trash bin near the side gate tipping over, and she assumed it was a raccoon, maybe a deer, they got those sometimes, and she didn't think much of it until she heard Duke's growl turn into a sharp, urgent bark, and when she looked up, her entire body went cold, because there, climbing over the 6-foot stone wall at the back of the garden, was the largest black bear she had ever seen. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this bear was massive, at least 3 £100, with thick black fur and small dark eyes that were already scanning the garden, already smelling the food on the table, already moving toward her children, and Sarah couldn't breathe, she couldn't move, her brain was screaming at her to grab the kids and run, but her legs wouldn't cooperate, and Ethan and Lily didn't understand what was happening. Lily even pointed at the bear and said something like, "Look mommy, a big doggy," and that innocent little voice broke Sarah's paralysis. She grabbed both kids by the arms and started pulling them toward the house, but the bear was already too close. It was moving faster than she expected, and Duke was the only thing standing between that animal and her babies, and what happened next still gives Sarah chills when she talks about it. Duke didn't hesitate, not for a second. He charged straight at that bear, barking with everything he had, his whole body a blur of motion and sound, and the bear stopped, confused by this loud, aggressive creature that was suddenly in its face, and for a moment, just a moment, the bear turned its attention away from the family and focused entirely on Duke, and that moment was everything. That moment was the difference between life and whatever nightmare could have unfolded, because Sarah used those precious seconds to shove the kids through the patio door and scream for David, and David dropped his phone mid-sentence and came running, and when he saw the scene outside, his heart nearly stopped. There was a bear in his garden, his dog was circling it like a matador, and his wife and children were trembling behind the glass, and David's first instinct was to protect, to do something, so he grabbed a metal chair from the patio and banged it against the door, trying to scare the bear, trying to create noise, trying to be useful, but the bear wasn't interested in him. The bear was locked onto Duke, who was still barking and dodging and pulling the animal farther and farther away from the house, and then it happened. The bear swiped its massive paw and caught Duke across the side, and Duke yelped and stumbled but didn't stop. He kept moving, kept barking, kept drawing the bear toward the tree line, and Sarah was sobbing, the kids were crying. David was yelling into his phone at 911, and Duke was bleeding but still fighting, still protecting, and by the time animal control arrived 15 minutes later, the bear had retreated into the woods, and Duke had collapsed on the grass near the back wall, his fur matted with blood, his breathing shallow, but his eyes still open, still watching the house, still making sure his family was safe. Now here's where the story takes a turn that might surprise you, because in the chaos of those moments, in the adrenaline and fear and confusion, David said something he would regret for a long time. He looked at Duke lying there injured and he said, "Why did he charge at it? He made it worse, he provoked that thing," and Sarah stared at him in disbelief, but David was convinced, in his mind, the dog had escalated the situation. The dog had turned a curious bear into an aggressive one, and if Duke had just stayed quiet, maybe the bear would have wandered off on its own. And I know that sounds harsh, I know some of you are already angry at David, but try to understand, he wasn't thinking clearly. He had just experienced the most terrifying moment of his life, and his brain was looking for something to blame, something to make sense of the chaos, and Duke was an easy target. So when the paramedics checked the family and animal control took statements, David kept repeating that the dog had made things worse, and he even hesitated when Sarah said they needed to rush Duke to the vet, and that hesitation, that coldness, it broke something in Sarah. She grabbed the car keys herself and drove Duke to the emergency animal clinic while David stayed behind with the kids, and the whole drive, she kept whispering to Duke, "You saved them, I know what you did," and Duke just lay there in the back seat, barely conscious, trusting her completely. And when they got to the clinic, the vet said Duke had deep lacerations on his side and had lost a lot of blood, and they weren't sure if he would make it through the night, and Sarah sat in that waiting room for hours, crying, praying, and furious at her husband for not understanding what had really happened. Back at the house, David was trying to calm the kids down, trying to explain that Duke was going to be okay, but even as he said the words, he wasn't sure he believed them, and the police had suggested he review the security footage from the cameras around the property, and David didn't want to. He didn't want to relive that nightmare, but something pushed him to sit down at his computer and pull up the recordings. And what he saw changed everything. The footage was clear, almost too clear. It showed the bear climbing over the wall first, it showed the bear moving toward the children before Duke ever made a sound, it showed Lily standing completely unaware just 10 feet from a wild animal, and then it showed Duke, not attacking, not provoking, but positioning himself between the bear and the kids, drawing its attention, leading it away, taking the hit so they wouldn't have to, and David watched that footage 3 times. And each time he felt the guilt hit him harder, he watched his dog make a choice in a split second that David himself might not have been brave enough to make, and he remembered what he said. he remembered blaming Duke, he remembered hesitating to save him, and he put his head in his hands and cried like he hadn't cried since his father's funeral, because he knew, he finally knew, that Duke wasn't the problem, Duke was the hero, and David had been too blind to see it. He didn't wait until morning. He drove to the animal clinic at 2 in the morning and found Sarah asleep in a chair in the waiting room, and he didn't say anything at first. He just sat down next to her and took her hand, and when she woke up and saw his face, she knew he had seen the footage, and all the anger she had been holding melted away because she could see the regret written all over him. And the vet came out a few hours later and said Duke was stable, he was going to make it. And David asked if he could see him, and the vet led him to a small recovery room where Duke was lying on a padded table, bandaged and exhausted but awake, and David knelt down next to that dog and did something he had never done before. He leaned his forehead against Duke's and whispered, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I didn't see it, I didn't understand, you saved my kids, you saved all of us, and I blamed you, and I'll never forgive myself for that, but I swear to you, I will spend the rest of your life making it up to you." And Duke, weak as he was, lifted his head just slightly and licked David's hand, and that was it. That was the moment David broke completely, because that dog had every reason to be hurt, to be resentful, but instead he offered forgiveness without hesitation, the way only a dog can. 2 weeks later, Duke came home, and the kids made him a welcome back banner, and Sarah had bought him the most expensive dog bed she could find, and David had installed new security cameras, motion sensors, and a reinforced fence around the entire property. But more than that, David had changed. He looked at Duke differently now. He understood something he hadn't before, that loyalty doesn't always look the way we expect it to, that sometimes the bravest act is the one that gets misunderstood, and that the ones who love us the most don't wait for us to notice before they put themselves in harm's way. And every night after that, David made sure to sit with Duke on the porch for a few minutes, just the two of them, watching the sunset, and he never forgot what that dog did, and he never stopped being grateful. And Duke, well, Duke just kept doing what he had always done, watching over his family, lying near the kids, staying alert. Because that's who he was, that was his purpose, and he didn't need recognition or praise or even thanks, he just needed to know they were safe, and they were, because of him. So let me ask you something. Have you ever judged someone before you knew the full story? Have you ever looked at a situation and made assumptions only to realize later that you were completely wrong? Because I think we all have. I think it's one of the most human mistakes we can make, and the lesson here isn't just about dogs or bears or mansions. It's about looking closer before we speak. It's about trusting the ones who have always shown us who they are. And it's about remembering that sometimes the quietest love is the most powerful. So if this story moved you, if you felt something during Duke's moment of sacrifice, then do me a favor, drop a comment below and tell me about a time your pet protected you, or tell me what you would have done in David's shoes, because I really want to know. And while you're at it, share this video with someone who loves dogs, someone who needs to be reminded that loyalty like this still exists. And if you've made it this far, thank you for listening, thank you for caring, and thank you for being the kind of person who sees the heroes that walk on 4 legs, because they deserve to be seen, they deserve to be celebrated, and they deserve every bit of love we have to give.